Back for more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult, and every day is not a great day for Grant Cardone, the internet's most famous cult recruiter, most famous financier of the international human trafficking cult known as Scientology, the internet's most famous con man, fraudster, grifter, OT8 level Scientologist, Grant Cardone. Wow, that is quite an introduction. That is exactly how everybody should introduce Grant Cardone. Tonight, we're going to have a chat with a gentleman named Ben John. I was introduced to Ben through the channel Cults to Consciousness. So let me give a shout out to Shalise Ansola, Cults to Consciousness. She did an interview with Ben earlier this week. I was inundated with messages and emails about this interview. And Shalise, and Shalise sent me a message as well, being like, you got to interview Ben. I apologize for not responding to your text message, Shalise, but I'm getting really bad at that these days. So let's see what Mr. Ben John has to say about Grant Cardone. Welcome to the show, Ben.
What is going on, Aaron? Oh my God. I got to tell you, I've never seen your podcast yet. I'll be on. Well, I've seen a couple of videos, but never the intro. So you really I was holding back some laughs there, man. That was hilarious.
Yes. Really lean into the whole AA run thing.
Yeah, man. Well, you don't hold back and you're a lot like me. So I can definitely tell we can connect on that level. Absolutely.
So let me show everyone your YouTube channel where people can find you. Ben John, the handle is at massive_impact_Ben. People can also find you on Instagram at Ben's Massive Impact. And then also your website is massiveimpactcoaching.benjaminjohn.net. Where shall we even begin? You know, my viewers have heard me talking about Grant Cardone for a long time. You know, I work in the real estate industry, but that's not why I talk about Grant Cardone. I talk about him because, like I said, he's one of the biggest recruiters and financiers of the human trafficking cult known as Scientology. And it's amazing how many people don't actually know that. I describe him as a fraudster, a con man, a grifter. I also enjoy a certain level of protection where Grant Cardone's not allowed to say my name because I am a former Scientologist, a big, bad, suppressive person. He's not allowed to come after me because it would raise my profile. He's not even allowed to sue me. He's not even allowed to sue me because it would give me a never-ending supply of content and free press. So a lot of people out there are afraid of criticizing Grant Cardone. You are not one of those people. Why don't you tell us, how did you get introduced to Grant? Why are you now publicly exposing his grift?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, yeah, it sounds like I have some questions for you as well. I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you were, in Scientology. So it intrigues me even more about you. But to answer your question, Aaron, as a beginner business, I started my own company, and that was pretty much building Victorian sunrooms, additions to homes. I did that for 12 years before I started my own company back in 2018. And about 2019, after a year of being into this, kind of just starting to get some momentum, I was introduced to a book. Some may know the book as the 10X Rule. And I read the book, and, in itself, on a surface level, it's got some good messages with it, right? 10X Rule is, on the surface is a good message and can be used for good. But what ended up happening was, I connected with him, and I kind of missed the underlying message of the book, which is kind of chase me for success. Come to me, get in proximity, get near me, and I have the answers for you. I have what you're seeking type thing, without directly saying that. That's kind of what's being promoted in all of his books, essentially. And so I went down the rabbit hole. I started paying the money, getting in the rooms with him, going to the networking events, and then slowly got introduced to being what they called a licensee, which now is being, they changed the name to a 10X business coach, which I invested in that and became a direct partner with Grant Cardone for several years.
Amazing. It seems from the outside that Grant Cardone's, all of his success programs, whereas I don't know if strictly speaking, they fit the multi-level marketing model. It seems to adhere to that model in the sense that the next step, the next training program, the next module, the next whatever is going to be the real key to success and answer all the Be the answer to all the reasons why you haven't succeeded yet. Just keep doing more, keep paying. It's very much like Scientology in that regard.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question that people ask me about Scientology. What is it at the lower levels or in the beginning that was like the hook that got you to be like, uh-oh, there's something here. I want a little bit more of this?
I talked about this with Shalise, and I talk about this very frequently on my social media. I think with, now I can look back and see what one of my biggest problems was. And it was kind of not knowing myself and having just a little bit of doubt, just a little bit of fear. And so even though I was doing successful and having a little bit of fear and really not knowing myself fully and being authentic, and here comes along someone who is proclaimed successful individual, multimillionaire, billionaire, whatever he calls himself. And then I see his face all around, he's all over the place. He spends a lot of money advertising and marketing his face to get on all the platforms. So all that combined, now he got in my face, and now, I resonated with him with some of his messages and his touching story about his dad passing away. And, although I didn't have a dad that passed away, I grew up without a dad from the age of 3. So I kind of connected on that level. All that combined. And then here he comes and says, you could be doing more. You may think you're doing well, but you're actually not. You're operating at lower levels. You're performing at lower levels. You haven't tapped into your potential. That type of talk kind of plants the seeds and fed on my doubt and my fear and my uncertainty. And it just grew.
How much money all in were you into the Grant Cardone scam for?
So, it's funny because on the thing that Shalise did from Pulse of Consciousness, if nobody's seen that, check it out. It says 250K. Although it wasn't directly 250K, when I combine all of the $40,000 here, the $15,000 there, the 10, the 5, all that, plus the hotels, the flights, I broke this down. It was definitely well above 250K. So reality, who knows? It could be 150K actually spent with Grant Cardone, but regardless, there's a lot of money to get me into the rooms, to pay for these programs. And there was a few things that I never actually got the service of. There was a business summit I bought for $5,000. Never got that. Never got an email to join that. There was a GrowthCon, 10X Growth Conference. For those who don't know, he puts on a business conference every year. And I bought my daughter a diamond ticket, which is $7,500. She wasn't able to make it, and they never wanted to refund me that. And I've never asked them for anything. So there's a lot of things that they didn't actually fulfill for me as well. Even being a 10X business coach and a partner in partnership with him, it was pretty wild, actually.
One of the things I find interesting about Grant's grift is that, a consultant, normally speaking, and I don't know that he describes himself as a consultant, but, a business consultant, a coach, normally speaking, would be giving you real world practical advice that you can use. And it seems to me that Grant's advice tends to not be, here's things you can do. It tends to be, if you would just be more like me, if you just become someone who's more like me, you will succeed. Like telling someone to hustle and work harder and think bigger is helpful to the degree that it might be motivational, but it's not real world practical advice. Like what did you actually feel like you were able to get out of any of the seminars or courses or coachings you ever did with him?
The best thing that I got out of that entire experience was the actual meaningful relationships that I was able to keep and actually, connect with people. There are a ton of people there that are lost and in the Kool-Aid and, just following a lost leader, following a misguided mentor. But there's a lot of people in there that, you got one of two kinds of people. Ones that are just fully engrossed in Grant, idolizing him like a god, trying to get in proximity with him, spending thousands just to get a picture with him, and really just in it. They're in it, right? And then there's some people there that are lost, and they got good hearts. They just don't know. They're at the early stages. They're like, they're seeing some red flags. They're not quite sure if this is for them. I managed to pull some really good, meaningful connections with some people that I've stayed in connection with throughout the years, and even when I left. That was also one of the things that kept me in there too, is like, gosh, I'm going to, leave some of these friends I've established relationships with for years. And I still have talked. You can imagine when I left, there was a lot of questions and a lot of intrigue with that. A lot of people are like, wow, I got to know what happened. Give me the scoop. Like, what happened? And, come to find out, most of the 10X business coaches that I know personally and that still work in partnership with Grant Cardone, they've seen a lot of the same red flags. They all have the same excuse. Well, I only take the goodness out of it. I only take the goodness and, I need to get my ROI back. That keeps people in it too, right? They spent $25,000, $30,000 just for that one program, and they want to stay in there and get their ROI before they can justify actually leaving. But there's some crazy stories. I mentioned one of them on Cults of Consciousness, where one of my good friends just described a terrible thing that she went through with Grant Cardone's wife, and literally calling out a lady in the crowd saying that it's her fault she got raped. And I couldn't believe that. Like, looking at Scientology now, now I can see how that's closely connected. And that's crazy to me, that type of mentality.
Let's talk about that for a moment. Let's tell the people that story.
Yeah. So this is not my story, but this woman is a good friend of mine, 10X business coach as well. I've known her for several years, and she's one of the people that reached out to me after I separated or disconnected, if you will, or was considered a suppressive person. And she told me the story. We were doing a Zoom call, just like this. And I, after I told her my reasons for it, she was like, yeah, I've seen some stuff too. It's just, I can't believe that this happened. And she described a story about, she was in a room, a couple hundred people with, Elena Cardone. For those of you who don't know, that's Grant Cardone's wife. And she was talking to a bunch of people, and she said, everything in your life that's happened to you is your fault, good and bad. And a woman stood up in the crowd and said, I was raped. Are you saying that was my fault? And Elena Cardone didn't even bat an eye. She said, yes. And apparently nobody left the room. And my friend was the only one that had to leave the room. And because she was overwhelmed with emotion. And as she's telling me this story over a Zoom call, she was bawling with tears. What's even crazier is she's never left that organization. She's still in it to this day, even as bad as that upset her, which is crazy to me now.
Wow. Wow. It wouldn't really be obvious to people who are going through Grant's training programs and have no familiarity with Scientology, but to a Scientologist, to a former Scientologist, it's pretty obvious that all he's done is repackage Scientology principles and techniques and sold it as business coaching. To me, that makes it so gross. But I also don't have a lot of exposure to the business coaching space, and I'm not sure whether all business coaching just sort of has that flavor or not. I just don't know. I just know that when I'm looking at Grant Cardone, the super Scientologist, and my experiential track is having been born and raised in Scientology and working for them at the most dedicated levels, to me, all I see and hear in Grant Cardone's rhetoric is Scientology. And it's just, it makes me cringe. Elena,
what's crazy? What's crazy, Aaron? I watched one of your interviews with God, what was that? I can't remember the name of that now. Something Hot podcast you were on with that guy talking
Cleared Hot with Andy Stumpf.
Yes, Clear and Hot. And you were talking about how some people, Grant doesn't talk a lot about Scientology. He doesn't really talk about his involvement with that. I was in it for 3.5 years and I didn't even know he was a Scientologist. How crazy is that? I didn't even know anything about Scientology up until a month ago when I found out that he was a Scientologist. And I was like, what is that? I've heard of it, never looked into it, finally looked into it and started connecting the dots. So what you said there, what you guys were talking about is spot on. He's not very outspoken about it. But after looking into Scientology, he's definitely operating the exact same way. And the whole business model is operated the same way too.
It's so interesting because it's this weird dichotomy where he will talk about Scientology on some of the biggest platforms where he does interviews. And it does it sort of telegraphs to Scientologists that Grant Cardone is always talking about Scientology in his businesses. And yet to those who actually go through it, he doesn't. I don't actually know how to explain it, but you know what it is? It's probably because when he goes on these big giant platforms, these big podcasts, he's not the one who brings it up. Other
Yeah.
people bring it up, and he just does his best to give as good of an answer and or deflect as
Deflect
much
is
as
the biggest
possible.
one. Yeah. He seems to deflect very well.
Yeah. Okay. So I was going to ask you, how much of Scientology is woven into the training, but you almost wouldn't even know because you wouldn't have recognized it as such.
Well, so the biggest key factor that's relative to Scientology is that there's always another level, man. You can never like get to the top, and if or OT8 or whatever, whatever that nonsense is. It seems like there is no OTA, or actually, if there was something relative to OTA, it would be what they call platforming. And I talked about this as well when I bought a $40,000. So another guy that people don't talk about, who's a direct partner with Grant Cardone, is Brandon Dawson. I've been calling him out as well. He's got a big claim that he sold his business for $150 million and then came into partnership with Grant Cardone. And he pretty much does the 10X 360 program, which is a 2-day event. It's $40,000. I bought that program. I bought it directly from Brandon Dawson after I had a conversation with him while I was intoxicated. So that's a whole nother thing I noted too. And I didn't even realize that, but that's all planned out too, how they do 3-day events. You get there early, they exhaust your ass. And next thing you know, they give you free alcohol. And you're just not prepared for all these sharks. They grind you. You'll literally get hit up with someone trying to sell you something, and you'll go another 5 or 10 minutes. And then here comes another person. They're just hitting you left and right trying to sell stuff. But the 40K package, I went and did that 2-day event. And that there's a whole nother backstory of that too. But the whole point of this story is that there was an upsell in that for 400K, where they call it platforming your business. Who knows what that means? They take your business to the heavens, I guess. I don't know. But you pay 400K, and I've probably seen about 10 people take that offer in that room.
Scientology is cheaper than this nonsense.
Right?
Wow. Okay. So do you recall, what are you supposed to get for 400K?
It's just, so they describe your business as hitting breakpoints, right? And again, true, but you're hitting all these breakpoints, and you don't know the tools to get past that first breakpoint. And they just describe, they try to paint you a picture of where you're at. You're going to hit this breakpoint, and if you don't have the tools when you get to this breakpoint, you're going to get bumped back to this breakpoint. And so in order to skip all that, you got to do the big investment, and you're not serious unless you actually are ready to put forth this amount of money. But if you do it, we're going to platform you, and we're going to turn your business, pretty much just have a turnkey successful business that's effortless and just a money-making machine, is kind of the way it was described.
So I've heard Grant talk about in his interviews how he's got 11 different, privately held companies. Which one of his companies were you paying all this money to?
So the most of my money went to networking events, and then programs, courses, much like that one, right? They got the 10X 360, they got 10X stages, which is in partnership with Pete Vargas now. And so I did that twice. I mentioned Business Summit. There's been so many damn courses, 10X Business Boot Camp, which as a business coach, I ended up doing one of those for him in Philadelphia for just a handful of other businesses. But yeah, there's just so many courses and networking events that I primarily did it for. And so that's the majority of where all my money went, was to programs and getting in the room. Because that is talked about so much, is get in the room, get in proximity is the saying. You're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. All these sayings that make you feel like you're not shit unless you get into these rooms next to Grant.
And in order to get into the rooms, you've got to pay for the access.
Exactly.
So you mentioned in your interview with Shalice that, at one point you had like his face on a wrap on your car. Was this part of the 10X Business Coach franchise program thing?
So it wasn't his face, it was his brand. It was 10X, Grant Cardone licensee, but it was all over the place. I must have had it like 6 different spots, big old 10X. That was something I did myself. I think I was the only one who's done that, to my knowledge. So I was probably, in my opinion, one of the more committed ones. I wasn't successful. The specific program to be a 10X business coach was 25,000. And then it's $1,000 annually after that. And to my knowledge, there was about 400, maybe there's more now, 10X business coaches globally, but they're not successful. They're all in the same boat. I've never heard any of them. There may be a couple, probably you can count on one hand, the successful business coaches, and probably not that successful. So yeah, I was one of the more known ones that was like really committed, to the point to where when you see my face, you see Grant, you see 10X, because it was all over my house and all over my truck. And I talked about it 24/7.
Okay. So help me understand how the 10X business coach franchise program is supposed to work. Are you supposed to bring in people who sign up for the 10X seminars, or are you supposed to recruit other business coaches? What was the deal?
Yeah. So you do all that. You can definitely bring in others to be a 10X business coach, and you're going to get a commission, very small commission too. And then the other way is you can sell his products and his service and his programs. So like the same type of services and products that I bought, I could now sell and make a commission off of that.
So is this in fact a multi-level marketing structure?
Yeah, in that sense, that is exactly the way a multi-level marketing company is structured. Absolutely.
So if you recruited someone who signed up as a business coach, you said you get a small commission on that. But then let's say they recruit someone to be a 10X business coach. Are you getting commissions on the people they recruit as well?
So that part, I don't know. That's more of a pyramid, which I guess would be a classical, I don't know what you call that. Is that what a Ponzi scheme is, I guess?
Well, no, that's an MLM. That's multi-level marketing.
Okay. See, I don't know, but I imagine that is set up that way. I know that directly, if it's one-to-one referral, you definitely get a commission. I don't know if it kind of spider webs into the pyramid process or not. I didn't even get that far.
Okay. So, Cardone, he's everywhere on the internet. He's probably one of the most marketed people on the internet. And I imagine once you get into a sales funnel, you've got the Cardone Ventures and the Cardone, whatever. I don't know. I'm sure it's one call center for all of his companies. I don't know. I don't know exactly know, but you'd think it probably is. And they're all selling these programs and these courses and these upsells and everything. I guess what I'm having trouble understanding is, so you're paying $25,000 for what? The privilege of selling his programs? Like what are you actually buying for that $25,000?
Yeah. So you get lifetime access to Cardone University, which is basically an online training platform and a system that I also paid for. I paid for that for my construction company, so that I could train myself and anybody else who was a sales rep for me or worked for me in any capacity. So I was trying to get their mindset on the 10X mindset, Grant Cardone's mindset, right? And so you get access to that, so you can be completely brainwashed at 24/7 anytime you want. And then you can get set up to sell stuff. So there's that. And then everything, this is kind of one of the things I look forward to as someone who was idolizing Grant as well. Going to the actual 10X headquarters twice a year for masterminds, just to pretty much hear the same stuff every time. That I actually looked forward to, but that costs money. You had to travel and all that good stuff, but that's essentially what you get. You get the 24/7 lifetime access to the Cardone University. You get to sell and get a percentage, and then you get to regularly come to 10X headquarters and train, which when you go train, you get upsold also. It doesn't matter if you're a 10X business coach or we got treated the same way as someone he didn't know. You are getting upsold hard.
Wow. As a 10X business coach, how are you supposed to reach and sell and close more people than they're already reaching through all their online marketing? Is this part of the tool? Like, how is that supposed to work?
Yeah, it doesn't work. The only way in my mind that works is if someone is already successful at, like there are some people who have like successful businesses. And so I think what they're hoping is that they're going to inject Grant's training into what their already existing successful business. And now it's just like kind of a rollover where they get a bunch of business at once. But yeah, no, I don't think, again, to all the business coaches that I've spoke with, they're not successful. They're not, and no one will admit this. No one will admit it. There's so many reasons why. They're embarrassed. That's probably the main one. You know, they want to fit in. A lot of people, you know, that community of fitting in with people that are on that same brainwash frequency. There's so many reasons why, you know, the ROI aspect. So no, I don't think a person, generally speaking, I think it's a very rare thing that someone actually is successful with implementing what he's trying to teach. And I think the way that's happening is they're inserting it into their already successful business. If I was to guess.
Yeah. You know, that's how it's impossible for people to be honest about the results that they're getting, when at the end of the day, what they're trying to sell is success. They're trying to sell the idea of success. This is why multi-level marketing companies are so dangerous. Like, because someone might go, hey, why don't you bring someone on who actually has been successful in these training programs and interview them? And I'll tell you, one of the reasons I wouldn't really want to is you can't trust what they're saying, because what they're trying to do is sell the illusion of success, sell success itself.
Yeah.
And you know, people that sign up with MLM companies is part of the training programs that they go through is you got to work on your story. You got to perfect your story. Everyone's got to have like a rags to riches story and how this product and this business program made you succeed. And your story is what you use to recruit other people, because what you're selling is success. So you can't trust anyone. Everyone's pretending to be so much more successful than they are, when the reality is most people are losing a lot of money.
Yeah, 100%. I absolutely see that all the time. You know, I'm very outspoken about, you know, I've only made in the 3.5 years and all that money I invested. And let's just take that all aside. Just the investment in the 10X business coach being $25K initially, just to be that. And then, you know, the money that it cost annually for the few years. So another few $1,000s. Now we're at 28K. And then the money I spent to travel there, it's well into 35K, maybe more, 40K, just for that experience alone. But, yeah, it was not successful is what I can tell you. And I'm not afraid to admit that I probably made $2,000 in that entire experience.
I've always wondered how many, whether people who are, you know, wrapped up into the sales funnels of all of Cardone's other businesses are sold or upsold to try to get them to invest into Cardone Capital, you know, the real estate syndicate program. How did Cardone Capital factor into all these sales programs and training modules and seminars and things like that?
Oh my God, this has not been talked about. I'm so glad you brought that up. There's so much to talk about with this, and especially that I've been in it. It's just, you're bringing back memories, man. So they talk about it quite a bit, because they're trying to get, that's one of the things they're trying to upsell you on, even if you're not there for real estate at all, because you don't even have to be in real estate to invest, right? You just throw them some money and be like, hey, you do the work and give me some money back. I'll give you, I don't even know what the thing is, but I'll give you $250,000 and you give me $200 every month for the next 20 years or whatever, something stupid like that, I imagine. How does that make sense? But how it's being presented is they'll use their own employees. I'm so glad you brought that up, because some of his top employees will talk about this. They'll be like, you know, I'm a millionaire now. It's because I took my hard-earned money and I invested it in Cardone Capital. And it's very clear to me now that that was one of their agendas. They're trying to get people that are not even interested in real estate and investing to see someone who's saying that someone who appears to be good at sales and teaching them sales strategies. Now they're saying they invested in Cardone Capital and they're making money on a side hustle in real estate. And now they're starting to do it. And again, I know a personal 10X business coach who got hustled on that too. Where he invested in Cardone Capital and he just got treated like dog shit. And not only that, did not make what they said that they were promising him he'd make.
That is fascinating. I don't want to overspeak on this point, but I believe there is something legally questionable about marketing a real estate investment product to people who are in sales funnels of disrelated companies. And I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to speak too strongly on it, but I've been told that there's some possible questionable legal issues there. And I've always wondered how that worked, because Grant does say that his end goal is to become a bank. He wants to open a bank. He wants to be a bank. He wants to get a bank license. He wants to open a bank.
Yeah.
And that is also related to his real estate business. And it's very clear to me that all of his other privately held companies are simply to attract as many people as possible into his sales funnel so that he can upsell them to the final destination of real estate and financial products.
Yeah, it does seem like that is the final destination. I think I agree with you 100%. It seems like out of all the stuff he pushes, all the stuff he talks about, in the end, it always comes back to real estate, I've noticed.
Yeah. Real estate syndicates work great for the person who's running the syndicate.
Right?
It doesn't work that great for everyone else. Let me see. There was another question I had here. What was the turning point or the breaking point for you? Like what? Because someone might go, oh, well, this is what the MLM people say. Lots of people sign up for business, but in the business world, only the top performers excel and succeed. And it's not for everyone. And if you fail, it's your fault. And you're just sour because you spent a lot of money, but you didn't bring the hustle. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't commit yourself. And now, this is how MLM people think. This is how the Cardone people think. If you fall out and you succeed, it's because you didn't try hard enough and you're just bitter. And now you're salty. It's just like, it's what Scientology says about everyone.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I got put in that box big time. Especially when I came out, everybody said I was a hater. I'm jealous. I'm not successful. I'm hurting. I'm angry. All that stuff, man. It's still being said about me. They want to put me in a box, and this is a way to protect and to prevent somebody from ever having to confront their false confidence and defend something that they're supposedly passionate about and believe in.
So for you, what is the difference between a program where someone just didn't succeed with it because they didn't have what it takes? What's the difference between that and the difference between, oh, this is like a ripoff, this is a scam? What made you go, oh, there's something actually kind of like, this is unethical, this is a ripoff?
That is a very if I was to answer that, it's a long answer. So let me try to, it wasn't anything. So throughout those years, there were red flags. There were feelings I got that were not right. There was things that were flat out evil that I seen that I was like, wow, did nobody else see that? And I ignored it and justified it in my head why, I should let it go or not worry about it. I had without getting deep into this, I don't know if you caught that part of Shalice's, the podcast with Shalise and Cults of Consciousness, but I had like a moment in my life where it almost felt like I was being told to sit down and pay attention to everything I've been ignoring. It was like a flash, man. All the moments, like, I guess it's like life flashing before your eyes type moment. But instead, it was all the red flags flashing before my eyes moment. And they all just hit me. And I was just like, wow, I totally was blinded to all that stuff. And you couldn't have talked me out of it, man. There were people that flat out told me, friends, family, are like, you're in a cult, dude. And I just didn't believe that. I thought, they were suppressive, if you will. So I ignored it. I'm thinking, well, they don't, they just don't, they're on a lower frequency or whatever. Or they just, they don't believe in themselves. Or I told myself those things to ignore those signs as well. But yeah, man, it was a moment outside of that woke me up. And once that happened, it all just hit me. It was just like the floodgates were open, and I seen everything throughout the years that I ignored, and I was not going to ignore it anymore. And so, yeah, it was about a couple weeks prior to me publicly coming out with that I went through some massive changes in my life. And what's crazy is, I'll tell you this, everything I was chasing for almost 4 years prior to that literally fell in my lap in a couple weeks. And I'm not even kidding. Everything. Money I was waiting on for 3 years, people I've been reaching out, celebrities I was reaching out to for 5 years, opportunities, all in 2 weeks. It was quite remarkable.
Wow. So a moment ago, you used the word disconnection. Is that because you've been doing a little studying on Scientology, or is
Yeah.
this terminology that exists in the training programs?
It does not. No, they do
Okay.
not talk. This is all new to me. The only reason I'm bringing that up is because I watched the Scientology documentary and watched some videos like yours. It's quite funny, you know what I mean? And then I watched the Vlad interview. Yeah, I sequence all that. I poke fun at Grant and other people as well. There's other people that are self-serving entrepreneurs and misguided mentors, as I call them, as well, out here bullying people, doing all kinds of just fear-based strategies to hook you. And so, yeah, I sequenced that exact video you're talking about where Grant got confronted with Xenu, and he was like, he just completely shut dude down. And so I made a little funny thing because I noticed, I was like, wow, he didn't even answer that, and he completely fucking deflected it. And I was like, I got to bring this up. So, and I made an explanation of who Xenu was in case people didn't know. It was pretty funny. So I poke fun at it. It's quite funny to me now. And I'm trying to wake people up in that process as well.
So in a lot of the videos that Grant does, and I've always wondered how much of the content in his videos is reflected in his actual training programs, or his courses and whatnot. But he does talk in his videos about, you got to get rid of the haters and the negativity in your life. You got to get rid of them. And, when I hear him talk like that, I know he's talking about his own version of Scientology disconnection.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered whether there were certain training components or these coaching, conferences and whatnot, where you are asked to sit down and identify people who are sources of negativity in your life and encouraged to disconnect from them, whether they call it disconnection or not. Is there an aspect of this in the training programs?
So they don't talk about it. No, but I just did a podcast yesterday with, one of my good friends who was signed up as a 10X business coach for a few months. And then she got hit with the annual fee. She didn't know that was there. And she was like, hey, I don't think this is cool. You guys didn't tell me about that. And on top of that, I think you guys are just terrible at communicating in the service. I want a refund. And she was also on the Facebook chat saying, hey, I think this could be better. You guys, I could help you guys make this better with this. And they pretty much blocked her and started saying she was being negative. And then the other aspect, even though they don't talk about it, I know they operate with the disconnection approach. One of the fellow 10X business coaches that I know in a different country, I talked to, and she was telling me, she's like, because she's still liking my content and following me and all that stuff. And she said, it's funny. And she's not totally all in on Grant. She's like, she does not agree with Grant. She doesn't like his raw sales tactics and all that. And she makes fun of him quite a bit. But she was telling me that they reached out to her. One of the managers of the 10X Business Coach program reached out to her. I think it was a couple of people actually reached out to her and said, hey, we noticed that you're following Ben still and you're liking some of his content. What's going on with that? Like, are you in alignment with what he's saying and all that stuff? And they're pretty much suggesting that she needed to disconnect with me. Thank God she's got a backbone and a very outspoken person, and she's very successful. She runs like 10 of her own businesses. And she flat out told him, like, dude, I can like and befriend whoever I want. Doesn't mean, I don't have to fully agree with him, just because he has this relationship with you guys. That doesn't mean anything. That has nothing to do with me. So I'm not going to disconnect with anybody. But they were definitely suggesting that. Yes.
Interesting.
It's
You did mention something about, it seemed like there was a particular point where you very specifically went public or became public with your criticisms of Grant. Is this something that was necessary? Let me clarify the question though, because I don't mean, did you really have to do that? That's not what I mean. I mean, like, do you have to? It just seems to me to be so scientologically similar, where you're either in the group or you're out of the group. Like, I feel like I'm not asking a good question. What made it necessary for you to what was the public stance that you were now taking? How were you taking it, and who were you delivering that message to?
Yeah, that's a great question. Beautifully put. So my stance is, I like to refer to myself as being the modern day David and Goliath position. I view him and many other people who, again, I coined the term self-serving entrepreneurs and misguided mentors. they are damaging people and taking advantage and preying on people's fear, doubt, and uncertainty, especially in the entrepreneurial space and people who have businesses or just starting out. And I'm here to wake them up. I'm not here to convince anybody. I want to share my story and give you my opinion. It's up to you to discern. I don't want followers. I don't want anything from anybody. I just want to put the message out there. And if something resonates with you, if you've noticed something or ignored something and the light bulb goes off, I'm going to suggest you lean into that and don't ignore it. That's my position. And on top of that, through that experience, I had to go through the dark to see the light. That's why I say, now instead of teaching what Grant teaches, the whole press, negotiate, ask hard questions, close, follow up, and then follow up a bunch more. That's not how I teach business. I'm teaching business the way it should be. And that's to just give them a good experience, give them all the information they need, answer their questions, and leave them alone. That's pretty much it. You've done your job as a sales rep. If they ever become interested in what you have or feel like you could add value to their business or their life, they know where to find you. You don't need to chase and press.
Interesting. So you mentioned misguided mentors. What was the phrase that you said you coined? It was
The Misguided Mentor. Yeah, that's the first book I wrote, and I didn't realize when I was talking about that. It's a story about my early entrepreneurship and then how I met Grant. What I didn't realize was at the time I wrote it, I was a misguided mentor, and so it's quite fascinating. So the new book I'm going to write, it's called Today's Misguided Mentors, and you'll be able to juxtaposition the two now. And I'm pretty much enlightening people with some of the stuff I just mentioned. There's a ton of stuff that nobody's talking about, and we've talked a little bit about some of it. But I'm gonna break this open, man.
That's awesome. No, there was a phrase that you used, but misguided mentors was the second half of the phrase. What was the first half of the phrase?
Self-serving entrepreneur.
Ah, there you go. Self-serving entrepreneur and misguided mentors. So you say they're damaging people and they're taking advantage of entrepreneurs. How are they damaging people?
So first of all, they're getting people to chase them for success. Instead of saying like, you have the answers inside of you, instead of uplifting people the way they should and say, hey, you already have everything you need inside of you. Once you know that, you're not going to go chase it. All the right communities, people, the right resources, all that stuff's going to be placed in your life at the exact right time. And your conscience is just going to know it's the right thing to do. It's going to be undeniable, much like everything falling in my lap in a 2-week period. I know what that's like, and I promise it's true. Everything I was chasing ran further from me. As soon as I stopped chasing it, it was already there the entire time. So that is one way. And not only that, the most damaging thing is they're teaching people to do the same thing to other people. So not only are they getting sucked into this, now they're operating their business. And a good example of that is my business was doing great until I got connected with Grant. It actually started doing worse. And that's because I started implementing something that was not in alignment with me. I started chasing money, and my customers could feel that. I went from actually caring for them completely to chasing their money. And I still, thank God, had a good heart deep down, but I still was in the back of my head doing what I was taught, and that's going after the money and an outcome.
Interesting. So when you came out publicly that you were kind of taking a stand against this, I forgot the phrase again. What was the first part? Something on
self-serving entrepreneur.
Self-serving entrepreneurs. Were you officially contacted by any of Grant's people that were like, hey, did they offer you a refund to go away? Did they offer you anything to stay quiet or anything like this?
Not at all. I'm actually shocked. If you go into my Instagram, in my highlights, there's a file that I put my old mentor, and I documented all of it from the very first email that I sent them. Very professional, very calmly just said, hey guys, just a heads up, I'm no longer in alignment with Grant. You can go ahead and cancel all my stuff. I don't want to be a part of it. In the meantime, I'm inviting Grant to have a conversation with me to explain to me why he thinks it's okay to treat people the way he does and teach them the things that he's teaching them. I think that's the least he can do for me, since I've spent almost $250,000 and donated thousands to his organization with love and compassion or something like that. It was very, very straightforward, very non-aggressive. And after that, they started blocking me. Actually, not at first. I started posting and they were watching it. They were all watching it. And then I noticed they blocked me because I was calling him out directly, saying, hey, I'm still waiting for you. And then it got to the point where I was calling him out to a boxing match. That was just fun because I realized like the only thing he values is his ego and masculinity. So I was like, maybe if I come after that, it might draw him out of the shadows a little bit. So it was quite funny. I started calling him out to a boxing match, and then I used his own sales tactics to follow up with him on the boxing match. So it became entertainment after that.
Okay, I have to ask, the endlessly parodied interview between him and Jordan Belfort, where he's trying to explain no interest is the level of interest, which comes straight out of Scientology. I feel like this is going to be like, that is an L. Ron Hubbard thing. Yeah, no interest. No interest is part of this scale of interest. And he was just doing a horrible job explaining what really is a Scientology concept and expecting a non-Scientologist to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. This is going to be like a multifaceted question here. So as a part of, when you were part of basically the Grant Cardone cult, essentially, what did you make of the fact, or were you even aware of the fact that he's just endlessly criticized online for being a con man and being a grifter and being a fraud and being a fake billionaire? Like people, I know there's sort of this meme that people go, oh, people hate success. In my experience, people don't hate success. People want to be successful. The fact that Grant Cardone is just known by his peers, and I say peers, to be a con man and a liar and a fraud. Were you even aware of this, or what did you make of it if you were aware of it?
Yeah, man. Again, those were red flags that did come up for me, and I was just so blinded. That's the best term I can come up with. Is I heard that, but I also just thought they were haters. You know, I thought that they were. You know, there's a way that he kind of gets in your head. It's the best way I can put it, man. It is straight up a form of inception, almost, if you will. Where I just looked at these people as, you know, being, you know, I look at them. Here I am, you know, I took the leap. I started my own company, and the people that are saying, hey, he's not successful, he's a con man, he's a fraud. I would look at them and judge them and be like, hey, well, you're still working a 9 to 5, man. And like, you know, maybe I'm on the right path, and maybe you're just hating on me because I'm going the right direction. There's ways that you talk yourself into ignoring that stuff. And I'll never forget it. My best friend was living with me when I really started early getting into Grant. And he said to me, he's like, you know, it'd be funny, man. He didn't even say it any other way than the way I'm about to say it. He was like, you know, what's funny? He kind of looks like you actually too, with the bald head and the beard. He's like, you know, be a trip, man, is if like you found out that just all this is just bullshit. Like he really isn't that successful. He really doesn't own any of the stuff he owns, and all this stuff. It's really all just exaggerated. And I was like, come on, man, you can't fake that stuff, dude. And that was my response to that. Well, come to find out, I'm thinking he fakes a lot of that stuff. You know, I found out, I don't know if this is true or not, but there is a suggestion that he doesn't even own the 2 planes and 2 helicopters that he claims he does. I think the Church of Scientology owns that stuff, to be honest.
Well, I would be pretty shocked if Scientology actually owns those things. But I would also be shocked. But I would also be shocked if Grant Cardone owns those things.
Right? I'd be more shocked with that. Yes.
Did you, just because I mentioned it, I have to ask you, had you, when you were still in the cult of Grant Cardone, did you see the Jordan Belfort interview?
Yeah. By the way, I like that we're calling it the cult of Grant Cardone. Oh my God. Hilarious. Yeah, so that was the first video that I sequenced, and I called Grant Cardone out to a boxing match. I had the thought already on my head of like, God, how can I come after his ego and his masculinity? And during that time, I befriended a guy in London who's an old bare knuckle boxer fighter, and he trains people to spar and does public speaking now. And he's a good friend of mine now. And he came over, I flew him over. We spent a week together. It was the first time I ever hit the pads. And then now he's been kind of training me from afar. I just post some videos of me hitting. He's like, yeah, that looks great, bro. You're doing this. Now what I want you to do is this. So he's been able to actually train me from across the country. But I had the thought, it was lingering in my head. And then I had an Instagram live with someone who was defending Grant Cardone. And it turned out to be a productive conversation, actually, you know, because I told him, I was like, hey, I'm not hopping on Instagram Live to have you troll me and be hateful and aggressive. I'll have a productive conversation, but that's not what this is, man. And thankfully, he took me up on it and he was defending Grant Cardone. But I told him, I was like, what if I called him out to a boxing match? And he kind of encouraged it. He's like, dude, I would love to see that. So immediately after the Instagram Live, I found that Jordan Belfort clip and I sequenced it and I called him out because I could see when he was calling Jordan Belfort out, he didn't want to box. That dude has so much. Another term I call these guys is they're lost leaders with false confidence. I can see the lack of confidence in these guys. And Grant Cardone, I spent enough time in proximity with him. I sat front row every time I went to the 10X headquarters, like, 5 feet from him. I could look him in the eyes and I could tell he's hurting, he's lost, and he is not confident. I promise you.
Yeah. It's funny because he did call Jordan Belfort out to a cage match, which was just the most ridiculous thing. And he's always leaning back in his interviews and flexing his muscles in which is like the most insecure, like sort of alpha telegraphing type of weirdness. And you're like, I love the fact I'm going to be really petty here. I love the fact that Grant's always wearing like 17 bracelets. And I'm like, at what point does a grown ass man wake up in the morning and go, oh, 3's just not enough. Like load me up. I need more bracelets. And anyway,
well, thank God I only have one on then, or you'd be coming after me too.
Grant has an identical twin brother, Gary, right?
Yeah. I did see that. Yeah.
And because of all the steroids that Grant takes, they no longer look that much alike or sound that much alike. But you can tell from the anyway, whatever. I get really, it's easy for me to get very, very petty when I start talking about Grant. But let me ask you this, because no matter what you think about Grant, Jordan Belfort said, look, you are one of the world's best marketers. And for some reason, that's not good enough for Grant. Grant wants you to think he's one of the world's best salesmen. And yet when Jordan Belfort tried to get Grant to give him any examples of sales techniques, he couldn't do it. He's like, hey, I got some fish. You want some fish? I got fish. You want fish? And here's where it's so ironic. Grant is actually known for being an incredible salesman in the car sales industry. That's where he got famous. If you're a car salesman in the United States, you've watched Grant Cardone's sales videos. So the fact that he's doing an interview, he's doing a podcast with one of the world's most famous salespeople, Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street, and he couldn't give him one good example of salesmanship. I don't know. What did you think when you were watching this thing?
Again, it just screams lack of confidence to me. Matter of fact, I've never heard him really, his bread and butter is hard questions. That's one of the biggest things that I adopted and that most people adopt. And that's the biggest thing that's pushed in his sales training, is that you need to learn how to ask hard questions. When they say this, you say this. And they have a template for all that stuff. I was so caught up in that. I always had a list of 25 hard questions to ask on my computer, on my phone, printed out next to me. And to be honest, that was a lot of, I did make some sales doing that. But when I think about it now, the only reason I was able to make those sales with hard questions like that is because it only works on people who are doubtful and have a little uncertainty in them and really don't know themselves as well. So again, this stuff, they get sucked in because they don't know themselves, and then they teach people to sell this way. And the only way that actually works is when they're talking to somebody that doesn't know themselves as well, or doesn't have a backbone to say no. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people in this world that are in that position, man. They really don't know themselves and they can't say no. And that's why that's pretty effective, unfortunately.
What would be some examples of hard questions?
Have you heard enough to make a decision? Other than money, what would be the other reason why you wouldn't want to move forward with this? I've used all that to follow up with Grant on his, you can hear some of them on my follow-up with the boxing match. Because I would use that as a joke, like, other than money, is there any other reason why you wouldn't want to move forward with this? So my example of that would be like, hey, Grant, other than lack of confidence, is there any other reason why you wouldn't want to take me up on this? So I kind of played around with it a little bit, but to be honest, I tried forgetting all those hard questions because they don't serve me, dude. Like, I don't need to press. When you are asking and probing, as they call it, what a terrible term, right? You don't want to probe your customers. When you're probing, you're pretty much tapping into, you're unconfident. Like it screams lack of confidence. Like the person who doesn't press is confident. That's my whole perspective of it now. And I can clearly see that, like, if you're trying so hard, that means you are lacking confidence. I can see that. Otherwise you wouldn't need to try at all. Like you should just be confident you gave them a good experience and did all those things I was telling you about that should be done in sales. But yeah, there's a plethora of hard questions that he teaches to utilize to tactics. I'll call those tactics because that's what they are. They're not effective strategies. They're tactics to deceive is what they really are.
Interesting. Okay, another question. Grant has very publicly given what I would consider to be some of the most destructive financial advice to your average American, your average young person, a new family. Buying a home is the worst decision anybody could ever. Buying a home is the worst financial decision anybody could ever make. And you go, yeah, dude, buying a home was one of the best financial decisions anyone could ever make. And I've always wondered, how do Grant acolytes hear him give advice like that publicly on some of the biggest platforms and not go, oh, this guy's a con man?
Right. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Unfortunately, I bought into that nonsense too. Otherwise, I'd own a home by now. I don't even own a home. I'm still renting. And I think I was on the verge of buying a house actually a few years ago, about a year into it, just ignoring what he was saying about that. Cause I was like, man, I don't care what you say. And I think there are a mixed bag of people in that organization, right? There's some people that they already own their home and they're most certainly not going to sell it because that's what he said. Plus they've invested money in it and they're pretty committed to their home and they see the value of it, and they got equity. And so there's a lot of reasons why they're not going to change their mind. But there are people like me who I did buy into that logic. And I was like, wow, looking back at that now, that is definitely some of the worst advice you could be giving somebody. That only serves as agenda. And I think we both know that now. Don't invest in a home. Instead, give me your money. I'll invest for you. Trust me, you'll just get money in perpetuity. That's terrible. It just serves him.
Yeah, it really does. And any other people that you know or encounter or come into contact with who feel they've been ripped off or conned by this scam, please let them know. I'm happy to talk to them if they want to come on and do a live chat with me. I definitely want to highlight the fact that Grant, it's not just a matter of he's successful and people hate success. People love success. People in the United States worship success. This idea, oh, if you hate me, if you criticize me, you're a hater, is like the cheapest level of criticism. But that's because all Grant is selling is the idea of success. That's why he's a fake billionaire. It's why he pretends to be a billionaire, because his whole scheme is be like me. Be like me. I'm rags to riches. It's like, no, you're not. You were not. Anyway.
Yeah. Well,
I could go on and on.
Yeah, I know. I could tell. And I could go on and on with you too. But I can tell you, man, it's quite a remarkable thing to look back now and just remember these rooms I was in with thousands of people, all of them literally idolizing him like a god. I'm not kidding, man. I myself would pay thousands just in hopes of getting a picture with the man. That's crazy. And, to think that that's how he's being looked at. And, one of the things that validated that to me and how he's being idolized is when that individual who did an Instagram live with me that was defending him, I asked him a very important question. I said, because he was defending him hard. And I said, what's one or two things that you don't agree with Grant Cardone about? And he literally couldn't say anything. He couldn't think of anything. And for a good 10 minutes, or it was a long time. And we started getting into more conversations. And then finally he's like, oh, you know what? I just thought of something I don't agree with that Grant said. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's unrealistic to think that you're 100% in alignment with any individual on this planet. Or it's also more unrealistic to think that you can't have a disagreement with somebody and still have a relationship, whether it's a friendship or a business relationship. It's just quite remarkable. But I noticed after asking him that question, that was the guy that was defending him, I was like, that's how wiped these guys are in the brain and completely obsessed with Grant. that they are, to the point to where he can do no wrong.
Yeah, it's true. Guys, if you're watching live right now, do me a favor and hit that like button. You want to jump through some of these super chats real quick, and then we'll wrap this one up?
Yeah, 100%. I didn't know you were streaming live. I love this.
You didn't know we were live?
No, I love this.
We got almost 3,000 people watching, so surprise.
Yeah, no, I love live. So that's the best way to do it. It's pure authenticity, and it's just pouring right through us, man. That's the way to roll.
Oh my goodness. Okay, unknown person says, Grant Cardone is a great marketer. His advice is kind of generic, though. Look at Grant Cardone's interviews with Jordan Belfort. Yeah, okay. And it's true. You know, marketing is actually what he's good at. That's undeniable. I mean, he's one of the most recognizable people on the internet because of the marketing. But you can market anything.
Yeah, you can do the best, and you can spend a ton of money to get your face all over all the platforms. That's what he's good at. But just to dovetail off of what he's saying as far as the advice being generic, he's 100% right. Even the $40,000 2-day event that I went to, where they're platforming businesses, the stuff I learned there for $40,000 in 2 days, I honestly could have learned myself from, you know, someone in high school, or just looked it up on YouTube. I'm not even kidding.
It's sad. It's really sad. Okay, Chris 10M says, doesn't this repackaging Scientology make Grant Cardone a squirrel? Isn't that a high crime? So this is more of a Scientology-related question. Chris, technically it does. It's just that Grant Cardone has donated over $30 million to Scientology. So if he, you know, there are a lot of Scientology business consulting front groups that essentially pay Scientology a licensing fee to be able to sell business courses that are essentially just Scientology repackaged. And in essence, that's what Grant has done. And
like
although I don't,
business coach, yeah,
that's right. And although I don't believe, meaning I don't have any specific knowledge that Grant's businesses pay Scientology a licensing fee, it's almost like he does it de facto by donating tens of millions of dollars to them. So, and he goes on platforms promoting Scientology. So
yeah,
in essence,
when you're contributing that much, I think they're willing to sweep some stuff under the rug, probably.
Exactly. Ken's channel, how appropriate. I need to go Cardone 8X to catch up. Yes. Okay, let's see. Empirical truth. Is Gary Brecka a Scientologist? He is a 10X guy with Grant Cardone on his main page, and who also claims he healed Dana White. Oh, so this is the 10X health systems. Gary is definitely suspicious. I personally don't know if Gary Brecka is a Scientologist. Did you have any exposure to Gary?
I've met Gary about 3 times in person. I met Gary for the first time when he wasn't even a partner with Grant Cardone. He had his own business called Streamline. And he seemed like a good-hearted dude. You know, one thing that really struck me and rubbed me wrong was when he's on stage talking about how he can predict people's death up until the very day or hour even. That's his big hook, that he can predict when you're going to die to the day. And I don't think, I mean, that's pretty crazy to say that. That's a huge claim. So
I've been meaning to do a video about that. It just never rises to the very top of my list on any given day. But that's how, assuming that their stories are, that you can believe the stories and it's not just marketing BS. That's what they said. That's how they say they got Dana White. That when Dana White goes and tells his story, Dana White, the president of the UFC, on how he got connected up with Gary Brecka and 10X Health Systems, he basically goes that Gary, they did their test and they did this and they told me exactly when I was going to die. And I'm thinking to myself, how stupid are you? Right. How can someone who has been so successful financially and in the business world and the marketing space be so stupid as to think that somebody can tell you the day you're going to die? Like, that is the most cheap marketing, or one of the cheapest sales tools I could possibly imagine. And Dana White swallowed it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, you know what it is, man? It goes back to what I said. It just takes a little bit of doubt or a little bit of fear. And even Dana White had a little bit of uncertainty in his health, right? In any department, when you got a little bit of that, these people with scams come into your life at the exact right time. And that's when they're most successful.
Yeah, It's incredible. Linda Indrisi, as a CPA in public practice, a business degree, 20 years experience, coaching clients with their businesses is my job. These 10X courses are a scam.
Yeah.
They are a scam. All right. So let's see. Before we wrap it up, I want to show everyone one more time where they can find you on YouTube at Ben John. Handle is at massive_impact_Ben. You can also find Ben on Instagram at Ben's Massive Impact. Thanks again to Shalise Ansola at Cults to Consciousness for introducing me to you and making me aware of you. I really appreciate that. Let's see. Down the Rabbit Hole News. Always good to see you, Rabbit. Doesn't Cardone's wife speak against human trafficking? So shame a victim and say it's her fault. Wow. Yes. I mean,
wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that she speaks against human trafficking, but yes, if she has, and if she does, that would definitely go against the victim shaming, and especially one so atrocious as rape, and saying that that's their own fault. And more importantly, without even knowing that person's story, just being so quick to say it was your fault. That is, yeah, that's how deep in the Kool-Aid she is as well.
It's incredible. All right, guys. Well, thank you for hanging out with us this evening. Much appreciated. Thank you, as always, to everyone who watches until the very end. And I'll talk to you soon.
Take care, brother.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos,